Hey everyone, this is part 13 of our Building with Claude API series. And in this video, we're going to talk about the text editor tool that comes along with Claude. Okay, so this particular tool is built directly into Claude and it allows us to create, read, and edit both directories and files. And this becomes super useful because using this tool, we can view file or directory contents, we can view specific range of lines in a file, we can replace text in a file, create new files, and even insert text at specific lines in a file. Now, this tool is super versatile and super powerful. As a matter of fact, if you had been using any of the AI-powered text editors, the text editors probably are making use of this tool under the hood to enable you to do all the code edits and automatically generate code on your file. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is only the schema is built into Claude, okay? The actual implementation of the tool is something that we have to still do. That is an important consideration to keep in mind, because we know that whenever we want to have tool use with Claude, there are these two things that we need to have. One is the JSON schema, which we pass to Claude, and the other is the function, which we run in our machine. For the text editor tool, the schema is provided, but the function is still something that we have to implement. So how do we get access to the schema? We know that the schema lives in Claude, but how do we specify that we want to use this particular schema when we do a Claude API call? We can get that information from the Claude API docs. We see here how we need to specify the type and name of the schema that we want to use. All right. So just be mindful that the type itself has this date as a suffix. We want to use the latest one if we are using the latest models. And this is the name that we need to specify. The max characters key value is optional, but these two key values are essential. Okay, let's see this in action. Over here, we are making use of the Jupyter Notebook 13. It is again available in the GitHub repo. The link is in the description. This again is a simplified version of the code that we find in the download section of the text edit tool lesson from the official Anthropic Academy course. And over here, when we do the client message create API call, we are passing in the text editor schema that we want to use. Now, this particular schema is defined nowhere in this code base, okay? It is in the Claude's server. All we need to do is just pass in the type and the name as shown here, and Claude will understand the schema that it is supposed to use. Now, the implementation for it, we have it over here. So I'll show you the implementation right now. So here it is. It's basically a class that has a bunch of definitions that help us to view, here's the implementation for it, and then replace string and also create and then insert. Commands themselves, you can see it here in the docs. We can see that the text editor tool commands are view, string replace, create, insert. Undo was something that was previously available. It doesn't seem to be available anymore. Okay, so with these four tools itself, view, string replace, create, and insert, we can get most of what we want accomplished. And we have the implementation of all those four methods here. And this implementation is basically coming from the code that we find in the download section of the official Anthropic course. I've just taken it and used it in this simplified version of their example. All right, so we have the schema implemented in our notebook. Now, let's make use of this text edit tool with Claude, okay? The prompt that we are going to use is this: open main.py file and summarize its contents. Okay, where is this main.py file? Over here in the directory containing the 13 Jupyter notebook, we have a file called main.py. It's just a simple file which has a method called greeting and it says prints hi there. And using the prompt, we are asking Claude to open that file and summarize its content for us. Okay, let's run this and let's print it out. And here we have the response we got from Claude. It has given us a text block and a tool use block. The text block says, I will open the main.py file for you. And in order for it to open that main.py file, it needs us to make use of a tool call. Okay, it's making use of the SRT replace based edit tool, the one that we defined here, and it is giving us the command it wants to run. It wants to run the view command, and it has also given us the path. Since we have the implementation for it, we are just running it over here. We have created an instance of the text editor tool that we have in our code base. Okay, we have to run all of this in our machine. We are running the view method because see, that's the command it wants us to run, and then we are passing in the input, which is the path to the main.py file, which is over here. So we are running this, and this is going to give us the contents of that file. Okay, so it gave us the contents. We are going to now pass that back back to Claude, okay, so that it has context on that file, okay. And we know that in order to pass this context back to Claude, we need to include that as part of messages list. So previously the messages list just had that single prompt, which is the user prompt to open the main.py file and summarize its contents. We can even print out the messages history, the chat history, if you will. So you see in the beginning we only have the user prompt, and then here we have the Claude assistant response, which includes the text block and then the tool use block. And because it asked us to use the tool, we used it and we are giving the response back. Here you see the content, right? Basically the whatever is present inside of the file is given back to Claude as the response. Let's run the API again with all of this context. Claude is going to determine what it wants to do next. So here let's print this response now, and we see that Claude is in fact giving us a summary of the file, right? It says it contains a simple Python function and it takes no parameters, prints the string hi there to the console. This appears to be a basic greeting function, right? So now we have a summary of the contents of this file. So that's basically what we wanted Claude to do for us, right? And it is able to do this. Now this is all possible because of the text edit tool that it has access to. Let's take this a step further with this second example. Here we are going to ask Claude to open the main.py file and write out a function to calculate pi to the 5th digit. Okay, so basically we are asking it to open this Python file and create an additional function for us. This is kind of like what many code editors offer these days, right? It offers code generation. So here essentially we are generating code by means of using the API itself directly. We are essentially going under the hood to get this implementation done, similar to what many of the code editors offer these days. Okay, so here open the main.py file, this file, and write out a function to calculate the pi to the 5th digit. In addition to this, we are saying create a test.py file to test your implementation. So not only are we asking you to create a new function here to calculate the pi to the 5th digit, we are also asking it to create a new file called test.py to test that implementation. Okay, it needs to do a couple of things now. It needs to be able to look at this local directory to see what all files there are and then be able to read the contents of this main.py file. It also needs to create an additional file called test.py and write to it. So there are a lot of different things that it needs to do on our local directory. And remember, Claude only provides the intelligence. All the tool implementation is something that we provide so that they all happen in our local machine. Let's walk through this example and see how Claude does all this work for us using the text editor tool. Okay, so let's update the messages list. Now it contains only this prompt, and then let's use that to run our first API call. Okay, here is the response we have got. So it says, I'll help you create a function to calculate pi to the 5th digit and then test it. Let me start by checking the current directory structure. So it wants to first look at this directory structure to understand what all files there are. Okay, so in order to do this, it's asking us to make use of a tool use, and the tool is obviously the inbuilt string replace based edit tool. The command is view command. Okay, and it even gives us the input that we need to pass into the view command. So that's what we're going to do here. So here we are basically have the instance of the text editor tool, which is in our local code, and then we are calling the view command and passing the input, whatever it has given here, and let's get the result back. So here these are the files that are present in this current directory. So this is what we're going to give as response back to Claude. So here in the messages list, we see we are appending to the original user prompt the entire history, and because we have this history that we are sending to Claude, now you can see that Claude will give us the next response. It says good. Now let me view the current main.py file. Okay, so now it wants to look at the main.py file. So let's help it with that. So here we can run this and see we have the contents of the main.py file. This is similar to what we did in example 1, right? And then let's pass this along to Claude. So here we are appending to that original list. Okay, so we just hard coding all of this right now, but in a real world example, you'll be doing it a bit more dynamically. So with this, we run this code. Now we got the next response. It says, now I'll add a function to calculate pi to the 5th digit. It even says what formula it's going to use for accuracy, and it's going to add it to the main.py file. For this, again, it wants to do a tool use, and the tool command that it wants to use right now is string replace. So this is another command that it's using right now. So here we will use the string replace command and we'll pass in whatever path it gives us, which is main.py file, and then the old string that we had and the new string that it wants to replace. So old string string is basically the old code, and the new string will have the new function. Along with the greeting function, we'll have the function to calculate pi to the 5th digit. So let's run this code and see what happens. So it says successfully replace text at exactly one location. Now this response we have received from the tool use. Okay, now we would just need to pass this back to Claude. Now even before we do that, we can actually see the main.py file and see that we actually have the new method added to this file. So this method to calculate pi to the 5th digit, we actually have it here, and it was written by us, yes, by means of the tool that we have locally, but all the intelligence, all the code is actually created by Claude. Okay, so we are working in partnership with Claude here. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so now let's send this context back to Claude. So here in the messages list, again, it's basically the same drill now, right? So in the messages list, we include this new context from the tool result, which is what we are adding at the end, and we are passing this along to Claude, and we'll be able to see the response we got. Now it says, now let me create a test.py file to test the implementation. So it has done the first task that we wanted it to do, basically to calculate pi to the 5th digit. Now the second thing that we wanted it to do is basically create a test.py file, right? So that's what it's going to do for us right now. And in order to do that, it wants to make use of another tool. So let's check out the command that it wants to use. It wants to use the create command right now. And this is the path to the file, this new file that it wants to create. It also providing us the content of the file that it wants to create. Okay, so let's give all of this as input. So basically the path and the file text to the create tool. And by doing that, we see that we have successfully created the test.py file as well. So if we open up the directory, we can see, yes, the test.py file has also been created, which can be used to test the calculate pi to the 5th digit method, which also was created by Claude. So this is fascinating. This is amazing, right? Text editor tool gives us the ability to actually set up a coding assistant. We can actually, in fact, make use of this tool to set up something that will help us to write code, or even to write, like, a story, anything, right? So we can fine tune how we want the contents that is generated by Claude to be written to a file, how we want Claude to view it and, replace the text, create new files. All of that is in our hands by means of creating our function. So this is all our code. We are the ones who are deciding how Claude will be able to view the contents in a directory, replace string, create, and also insert text. All of this is completely under our control. It is our implementation. Claude just provides the schema essentially as a helper for us to get these things done. So this was an overview of the text editor tool that comes as a built-in schema directly inside of Claude. Hope this video was useful. Thanks for watching, and follow along if you're exploring AI for your workflows.